Hello and welcome to Hunt Down the Threequel, where we take a look at cancelled Half-Life 2 sequels. I'm Nova, and for our second episode we're going to be taking a look at Arcane Studios' Ravenholm episode, also known as Return to Ravenholm and Half-Life 2 Episode 4. Ravenholm would have been both a sequel and a spin-off to Half-Life 2, specifically the Ravenholm chapter, and would have featured the return of the Ravenholm location and the character Father Grigori, and would have followed the character of Adrian Shepard, who is the protagonist of the Gearbox expansion of the original Half-Life game, Opposing Force. This makes it also a sequel and a spin-off to that game. Fortunately, Ravenholm, despite not being released, does have a lot of information about it available online, specifically about the gameplay, although pretty little is known about the plot. All that we know about the plot is that it would have featured Adrian and Father Grigori, as previously mentioned, as Adrian wakes up in Father Grigori's base. Grigori would have been seen throughout multiple points in the game injecting headcrab blood into himself to make him immune to the headcrab zombies. At some point, Adrian would have to travel to a hospital, to an abandoned hospital, and fight off against headcrabs, non-headcrab zombies, which were more similar to zombies in Valve's other game Left 4 Dead, as well as monkey zombies who would have been sensitive to light. One of the most interesting things about Ravenholm is its gameplay, however, as Arcane Studio are most known for making immersive sims, which are a type of game that specifically rely on player freedom, which kind of goes against what Half-Life's gameplay is. Half-Life's gameplay is very on rails, and although you are given multiple weapons and thus multiple methods to take out enemies, you are still funneled into specific scripted events. Return to Ravenholm would have been slightly different, giving the player more freedom in what weapons they use and how they use them. For example, the player could find a nail gun, which could be used to solve puzzles with electricity, could be used just to shoot zombies head on, or could be used to lay electronic traps. So a player could create a line of nails and then connect them to a power source to create a electric tripwire. There were also other weapons that were intended to be featured were a charge gun, which would be a large electronic pulse weapon that would charge when near power sources. The player would also be able to smack enemies in the face with the alt fire of their weapons, so this would remove alternate fire options for the weapons. However, it would give the players a melee choice without having to switch to a melee weapon. The game would have leaned in heavily to the horror aspects of Half-Life 2's Ravenholm chapter, again being mentioned the zombie monkeys, which would primarily be featured in dark areas and would jump out to scare the players. The player would have to flash their torch at the monkeys' faces to scare them away and then lure them in for a kill. Towards the end of the game, Father Grigori would mutate into a giant zombie monster which would act as the final boss of the game. As for development, fortunately development went really well and the game was almost completely finished. However, Valve had began to grow tired of the episodic release format and decided to cancel the game. This is very unfortunate, and Arcane Studios have made it very clear that they would have loved to put this game out and would still like to put the game out at some point if given the chance. Thank you for joining us for our second episode. We will see you in the next episode, which will be our final episode. And I just said episode 3 times because Episode 3, I guess.